It's come to my attention that a lot of people want to know my story, and a lot of people are curious about me and what got me into mental health and what got me into advocating for men, and what's got me into researching fathers, and what has got me into really this space of psychotherapy and curiosity around loads of different issues. So this morning I was at a private school and I was doing a workshop. I was talking about things like healthy relationships. I was talking about boundaries. I was talking about consent. I was talking about racism. I was talking about colorism. And a huge amount of my workshop I was giving myself as an example. And afterwards, loads of girls came up to me because the workshop was just for girls, and loads of the girls came up to me and they were asking me questions around family. They were asking me questions around self-harm. They were asking me questions around friendship, loneliness, relationships with their mothers and their fathers, and sibling rivalry, and they were asking me for advice, and they were also asking me more about my story. And this isn't a unique thing. This happens a lot to me. A lot of people are constantly asking me about what my story is. What is my story? How did I get here? So I am going to do a series in which I'm going to talk a little bit about my story, and this is going to be part one of my story. And I'm just going to go up to about 10 minutes and stop there, and I'll just share it with you. And if you have any questions or you want me to clarify anything, just let me know, and I'll be more than happy to clarify. So just to give you a summation, I have been through alcoholism. I used to be an escort, male escort. I was homeless for 9 months. My biological dad has died. I have had multiple suicide attempts. I used to be an alcoholic, as I said. I used to have I went through massive depression in my life. I even went through a period of self-harm and having suicidal thoughts. And I also went through a long period where I was purposeless. And amongst other things, which you hear throughout my story. But I guess the easiest thing to do is to begin from the very beginning of my story. I just run you through part 2 and 3 and however long it gets to bringing you up to today. But I was originally born in a country called Uganda. For those of you who don't know, Uganda is towards the east of Africa, so it's surrounded by countries like Ethiopia, Kenya, Tanzania, the Republic of Congo, those sorts of countries. My mum got pregnant with me at the age of 15, and she had me at 16. When she got pregnant, she went and told my biological dad, of course, that she was going to keep the baby. And my biological dad basically didn't want anything to do with the child. So he abandoned me. And this is one of the themes of my life. One of the patterns and the internal things that I've had to work on in therapy is I've had to really work on abandonment issues. I have an avoidant attachment style I want love, but I'm scared that if people get close to me or I receive it, that it's going to go away. I know a lot, it's ironic that I became a counselor, because usually I know a lot more about everybody else and everybody knows about me, because I don't really share very much about myself. And that's because I'm too scared that if anybody gets close to me, if anybody knows me, if anybody really truly sees who I am, then they're going to abandon me. And so abandonment has been a major theme in my life. And so loyalty is a massive thing to me. Commitment is a massive thing to me. So that part of my story, and you hear more about it as I tell you in the different parts of my story. But abandonment is a major issue that's been a theme of my life. When I was 8 years of age, we moved from Uganda to Devon, where we were living in Exeter. I was brought up by my stepdad, who is a white man. So he married my mum, and they got married, I think, within 3 months of meeting each other. And my stepdad, whose whole side of the family, he's a white man, his whole side of the family his whole side of the family are Christians, and he converted to Islam in order to marry my mum. So he's a revert. And funny enough, one of the things that I really found difficult and growing up with my stepdad is that this is very typical, but when people revert from one faith position to another, usually they take it to the extreme. And when I was growing up, my stepdad really did take his faith position, Islam, to the extreme, in my opinion, and that's the way in which I received him. Obviously, he may have had a very different experience. My siblings might have had a very different experience with him, but my experience of him and the way in which he lived out his faith is that he was very extreme. But then I have to think about my personality as Cassim, and I'm a very balanced person in terms of I don't work on the extreme. I'm more of a bridge, hence why I became a psychotherapist. I'm very curious about everything. I don't really have a stance on anything. I'm not conservative, I'm not liberal, I'm not to the left, I'm not to the right. I understand politics, but I don't want to be driven by politics. I don't really think in binary terms of like the fascism, communism, or social capitalism is the best, or left is the best, or anyone who supports Labour, or anyone who's a capitalist is whatever. I don't really think in those. I take people for who they are and how I meet them, and understand that people do have are just basically doing the best that they can with what they've got. And so when I was growing up in my family, and I'll touch on this because it's important, my stepdad had 3 children with my mum. My mum had already had another child, which is my sister Rona, and Rona is black, I'm black, so me and Rona both have a black mum and a black dad, and the rest of my siblings are mixed race. And when I was growing up in my household, I never felt like I belonged in my family, which is really like quite a sad thing to say. But I've come to the conclusion, upon loads of reflection, that some people are born into the wrong family. They're born into the wrong culture. They're born into the wrong faith position. And the reason why I say this is, I don't know if you've ever met somebody who's like white, and when you look at them and you listen to them and you see their aura or their energy or their vibe, you're like, basically this is a black person. They just happen to have been born in a white body. And so I never felt, most of my life, I've never felt like I belonged anywhere. I've never felt like I fit in anywhere. That's been a major theme of my life. I've always wanted to fit in, but I never have. I've always stood out. I've always been in the middle, which is the last thing that I wanted. But it seems that that is the way in which destiny or fate has led me. When I was in school, had a really hard time. I was one of the only black kids in my school. I went through a lot of bullying, which I never told my parents or really told about anybody. Kids used to call me monkey and gorilla lips, and they would say like, go back to where you come from. You don't belong here. And when I actually hate my birthday. Part of why I hate my birthday is because when I first moved to England, they put me back 1 year than where I was supposed to be, because I didn't know any English, and they wanted to basically give me an opportunity to learn English. And then after I'd learned English, they were going to move me up a year, and they were going to move me to where I was supposed to be. Guess what never happened? I never got moved up to the year I was supposed to be. So and I was always bottom sets for everything, all my classes, which is why I always thought that I was stupid and dumb, because I was always in bottom set. And now it's ironic that I'm going on to do a master's degree and I've written multiple books and whatever, but I'm not an academic person. I'm more of a vocational person. And so when I was going through school, I really, really, really struggled. And the reason why I hate my birthday is because on my birthday, kids would always say to me, Cassim, why is it that you are 14 and we're 13? Is it because you're stupid? Is it because you're dumb? Is it because you're a monkey? And so I associated my birthday with indifference, with disgust. I hated myself for a long time. I never even wanted to be black, because everybody associated being black with being a monkey and being stupid and stuff like that. People all the time when they meet me, they say, Cass, you don't sound like how you look. And part of that was because I learned that if you're able to pronounce things properly, if you're able to speak, then there's a lot of classism, and the way in which you speak in Britain, I learned from a very young age, determines how people receive you, which is why I speak the way that I speak. A lot of black people obviously don't speak the way that I speak. But also, part of what's informed how I speak is that I've done a lot of research, I've done a lot of reading, I have a wider range of words and vocabulary to articulate what's coming up for me internally and my observations. So school wasn't the nicest period of my life, and I really didn't like it, and I really didn't fit in, and I really always, when I was growing up, I just felt like a failure. I thought that I was unworthy, that I was unlovable. I'm going to stop there because we've come up to 10 minutes, but I don't know if that gives you an indication into me and why down the road I ended up sort of doing research and stuff like that. But I'm going to stop there and leave it there for now. I hope you found it useful.